Hey, Larkin Rose here. I'm going to make a prediction, which is that most of the people who complain about this video or comment below negatively are going to do one of two things. Either they're going to complain about something before watching the whole video, something I later cover in the video, or they're going to complain about something I didn't say and didn't imply and don't believe. So don't do either one. Watch the whole video before you respond, and if you're going to complain, complain about what I actually said instead of whatever you imagined I might have meant, because I say what I mean and I'm rather clear about that. This video is about the fact that a lot of vegans, especially vocal militant vegans, are irrational and dishonest in their message. Now, I want to start off by saying there are a couple things about their agenda that I very much like and I very much approve of. I like it when human beings extend their compassion and their empathy even to other species. I think that's a very good sign. I think when people don't do that, it's scary. When they're completely callous and heartless to the suffering of other species, that's creepy. And when they all the way enjoy it in some sadistic way, that's beyond creepy. So that's outstanding. And when people want to reduce suffering even in other species, again, outstanding, great. This video is not about complaining about that stuff. This video is complaining about the fact that a lot of vegans, I would say a majority that I debate with online, are not honest about what they believe. So most of this video isn't even going to be about their beliefs versus my beliefs. It's their beliefs versus their own beliefs. They say things, they make assertions that they themselves don't believe, but they're acting on emotion and feels, and they're saying things for shock value that just aren't true, and they know they aren't true. And that's, first of all, telling a lie isn't helpful to begin with, and it definitely isn't helpful if you want to spread your message and convince other people. I'm going to start with the example of meat is murder, a popular saying among some vegans. Meat is not murder. Look up the word murder. The word murder means a human being killing a human being in certain situations. Now, you can say, well, that's just semantics. It's what words mean. Don't use words to mean what they don't mean. Now, if what you mean is meat is just as bad as murder, then say that. However, that doesn't exactly make sense either. Meat is a substance. For example, if you're walking along and you get run over by a car and you're dead by the side of the road, technically you're a pile of meat. Are you murder? No. Meat is a noun, murder is a verb. Why would you say something like that? I'll tell you why you would say something, because it's shocking and it gets people's attention. It's also ridiculous. If you get run over and you're lying by the side of the road and some psycho cannibal comes along and eats you, did he murder you? Nope. He had nothing to do with your death. He ate you after the fact. That's pretty creepy, but it's still not murder. Him eating you after the fact is not murder. So meat is murder is a fine example of something that is just plain not true at all, and people use it for shock value. Here's one that I see even a number of anarchists saying, which is carnism is a religion. First of all, carnism isn't anything. To try to make it an ism is already dishonest. Eating meat is something that Homo sapiens have done for thousands of years. Now, time out. First straw man to not throw at me is, are you saying that just because people have done it for thousands of years, it's okay? No, I'm not. Don't argue that. That's BS. I'm saying that it's not a religion. It's not a belief system. The ism thing is about a philosophy or a belief system. Eating meat is just what Homo sapiens have done for thousands of years all over the world. And to pretend that's a religion to make it sound shocking and whatever, it's just stupid. It's not a religion. It's not a belief system. It's not a philosophy. It's just something people have done for a long time, whether it's right or wrong. It's like saying, oh, you're a shoeist because you're one of those people who wears shoes. That doesn't make it a philosophy. It's just a thing that people do. On the other hand, veganism is an ism because it's people saying, well, we believe it's wrong to treat animals this way. It's a belief system. That actually deserves an ism. Carnism is stupid. It's a stupid phrase that doesn't mean anything. And to pretend that it's a religion when it's just people doing a thing they've done for ages is just silly. You're trying to make it sound sensational to get people's attention and being dishonest in the process. And I hear a bunch of people saying, you're not really an anarchist if you're not a vegan. Again, utter BS. Regardless of whether killing animals is right or wrong, that is patently false. Anarchism is a concept dealing with people and political philosophy, or anti-political philosophy. It's about people governing people and ruling each other. It has nothing to do with whether you swat a mosquito. Anarchism is unrelated to how you treat other animals. It's a political concept. To say you're not really an anarchist, that's silly. It's stupid. You don't know what the words mean. Now, if you want to say you're inconsistent, you're morally inconsistent if you treat human beings this way, but you kill and eat cows or something, you can make that argument. But notice here, most of my complaint isn't even about their argument. It's about the fact that they're dishonest about their argument. Say what you actually mean. Don't use this dishonest shock value BS that makes your position sound extreme and stupid and dishonest. So, and we're going to get to the thing about killing in a moment, but to say you're not really an anarchist if you're not a vegan, that's just stupid. It's just downright stupid. It means you don't understand concepts and words. Now, a big thing a lot of people say, well, I don't know if it's a lot, but some vocal people say is you have to apply the non-aggression principle to every other species, not just people, or you're a hypocrite. Again, they're just wrong about this. And I don't just mean their moral assessment is wrong. I mean conceptually and philosophically, they're being dishonest. They don't even believe what they're saying. And it doesn't make sense either. For example, the non-aggression principle, it's a principle. It says, all right, picture here's a map with a whole bunch of people on it. The principle is that none of these people should commit aggression against any of the other people at any time in any situation. That's not okay. That's what the non-aggression principle dictates. It's like this is a rule of morality that applies to everybody all the time. It's a principle. It's an overlying thing that applies everywhere. Well, okay, what happens if we expand that to all the other species? It immediately doesn't make any sense. Because, for starters, all right, I'm out in nature and I see a coyote chasing a mouse around to eat it. All right, the coyote is committing aggression against the mouse. That poor innocent mouse didn't commit force or fraud, and yet the coyote is trying to eat it. Is that immoral? No, it's not. Because the non-aggression principle doesn't include animals. And you can say, well, no, it's only binding on people because animals are doing animal things. Well, then don't pretend the non-aggression principle applies to all species. That's not a principle. It's a one-way directional statement about how you wish people would treat animals. Be clear in your own head. Now, since we're going down that route, what should be done? And I made a post about this a while ago, and it got rather interesting. What should be done if I'm there and there's a coyote chasing a mouse around a field? Do I have the right to forcibly intervene? And should I, to save the poor innocent mouse who did nothing wrong? I don't think I should. And most of the vegans who commented said, no, I don't think you should interfere. Well, I should just stand there and let that thing kill that thing without moral justification? Why is it not okay for me to forcibly defend it? And a lot of actually said it's wrong if I intervene and stop, because then I'm the aggressor. Wait, he's trying to kill the mouse. Because they don't apply morality the same to all species, and they shouldn't, and neither do I, and nobody does. But to pretend that, well, we're going to put this principle on all the species, it's not a principle. It doesn't go both ways. It doesn't relate between other species. If what you mean is, I don't think people should commit aggression against people or other animals, then say that, if that's what you mean. But don't try to wedge it into this concept that doesn't make any logical sense. Now, when it comes to treatment of animals, one of the biggest things that vegans are dishonest about so often, some of them, not all of them, but some of them, and a number of them, is the notion that I respect all life. I think every species owns itself and has the right not to be blah, 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 and have the right not to be blah, 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 blah. No, you don't. That is a lie. Nobody, I mean nobody, values all life the same, even just all sentient life. If you're going to, for some reason, discriminate against plants, because hell, the plants, we're allowed to kill them. But we're going to draw the line there, and that counts as principle. Nobody even draws the line there. including the what are they called, Jainists, who pretend we're never going to harm another living organism. Yes, you are. You can't help it. Maybe you didn't know that a few hundred years ago, if you couldn't see things small enough or didn't understand what was going on. Here's the dead giveaway that none of the vegans who say, I think every animal owns itself just as much as I do, and every animal has an equal right to live, and every blah, blah, blah. No, you don't, no, you don't, and no, you don't, and I can frickin' prove it. If you're driving down the road and there's a dog, I'm going to keep people out of this example, and there's a dog in one lane and there's an ant in the other lane, and you have to run one of them over, I bet you're going to run the ant over because you care less about the ant. You value the ant's life less than the dog's life, and you should. I'm going to make it one better. There are 100 ants over there, and there's one dog over there. What are you going to do? I bet, like me and everybody else, you're going to swerve to miss the dog and run over 100 ants, which means it's not even a numbers game. You don't care about those 100 ants as much as you care about that one dog. Why? Because you draw lines and distinctions of morality just like everybody else. Meat eaters, vegans, everybody draws lines of morality. They can draw them in different places, and you can debate about where they should be and how people should treat different kinds of species. Don't pretend you respect all species the same and value all species the same. That is an absolute freaking lie. And especially if you go back to the example of the predator and prey species, every one specimen of a predator species has to eat lots and lots and lots of prey species. So if it's just a numbers game, if the value of every life is equal, then you should go kill the coyote because he's going to be slaughtering thousands and thousands of rodents and frogs, and you should go slaughter the raccoon because of all those poor defenseless crayfish and frogs he's going to eat. You should go slaughter all the predators. Well, no, it doesn't apply to them. I know it doesn't freaking apply to them, so stop talking as if it's a universal rule in all directions when you know it isn't, when you don't even apply it that way, when you don't even believe it. Stop saying cliche little sayings that you don't believe. You don't believe that all life is equally valuable. If you did, the first thing you do is frickin' kill yourself because you can't go for a walk without killing hundreds or thousands of little tiny living things. And you can say, well, I can't not go out, so that's sort of necessary. It's unavoidable. It's avoidable. Kill yourself. If you actually valued every single one of those things as much as a human being, you would not go out for a walk. Like if for some bizarre reason me going out for a walk meant 100 human beings were going to die, I wouldn't say, well, I can't not go out for a walk. Sorry, 100 people, you're going to die because I want to go for a walk today. You value them differently. Admit it. Be honest about what you believe. Admit that there are lines and we draw them in different places. And then argue with people about where the line should be and how we should treat different species. Don't do these generalizations that you know aren't at all true. Another thing that comes up quite often is the thing of suffering. Like if you eat meat, you're contributing to suffering. Sometimes that is true. Actually, the statement is not true. Sometimes if you eat meat, you are contributing to suffering. And it can be pretty often too. Like I totally hate the whole factory farming thing and the way they treat animals and keep them penned up and they're suffering and it's horrible. I don't like that. I don't think that's nice. And if you want to say we shouldn't be funding this and helping this to happen, excellent, I agree, that's outstanding. Say that. That's honest and true and noble and it makes sense and it's rational. Say that. But when somebody says like, if you eat meat, you're causing suffering, they're already unclear in their own head. And again, this is all about being clear and honest. If you get run over by the side of the road and somebody eats you, did he make you suffer? No, you're frickin' dead. Dead things don't suffer. The steak on the plate is not suffering because somebody eats it. And you could say, well, no, it's the fact that it was killed so you could eat. All right, well then point at that. Don't point at the eating meat. Use, for example, like if some, deer gets killed as a roadkill by accident, it's like, poor thing, and well, we might as well eat the meat. Does it contribute to its suffering? Nope. Does it care? Nope. It's kind of dead. Doesn't really mind what you do with it after the fact. By the way, I should also throw in the fact that Other than sometimes people, everything when it dies gets eaten by other species. Every freaking thing. Now, if you're unfamiliar with nature, you might say, no, a lot of it will just rot in the woods. Rot is the word we use for getting eaten by maggots and bacteria and lots of little tiny animals that are devouring you. That's what happens. When you're dead, it doesn't cause extra suffering for you to get eaten by something. And the reason I say people are exceptions is because we do this weird thing of sprinkling stuff on people, putting them in a box and putting them in the ground to make sure nothing can eat them. Like, okay, sort of weird. Or we burn our corpses. Strange, but whether a vulture eats you, or a coyote, or a fly lands on you and then you're maggot food, you get eaten by something. That has nothing to do with whether you suffered. It's unrelated. So when you tell somebody you're causing suffering by eating meat, it's a lie. You can say you're contributing to suffering if you buy food from the industries that treat their animals like this before they produce them and put them for sale. Say that. It's actually true. It's actually honest. I support you in trying to get people to not do that. That's outstanding. Do that. But and another thing that I find so often with vegans is they're not even familiar with nature. I grew up in nature. I was running around the woods for the last 40-some years, and I see it. And I remember as a little kid, I didn't like the fact that species ate other species. It just, like, I didn't want the cool little pickerel frog to get eaten by the water snake. It's like, but he's so cool. I didn't want the little baby bunny to get swooped up by a red-tailed hawk. Oh, that's horrible. Part of me wanted to defend the innocent, and the other part of me understood, well, that's sort of like, that's what nature is. Time out. Do not do the straw man at me of, oh, you think just because red-tailed hawks do it, we should do it? No. Pay attention to what I'm actually saying, not what you wish I was saying, so you can argue against it. Nature does this. And the choices of a snake or a red-tailed hawk, you can't just give them a salad. It doesn't really work. The choices are lots of prey species, individual animals are going to die, or the predator species is going to die. Those are the options in nature. One of them's going to happen. And I didn't like that when I was growing up. And when I was growing up in the woods, I realized that suffering is the natural course of things. Time out, another straw man. Don't throw at me, you think it's okay just because it's natural? No, I believe nothing of the sort. It's natural to want to punch somebody in the face if he annoys you, and yet you shouldn't. If somebody has something you want, it's natural to want to punch them and steal their stuff and run away, and yet you shouldn't. Natural has nothing to do with whether it's moral or not. I am saying that if you go out in the wild, the way animals die in the wild is way worse than being killed by a hunter. Way worse. I use the example of a white-tailed deer all the time here in woods of eastern Pennsylvania. How do you think they die in nature? If you watch too many Disney movies and think, oh, nature is all this lovely, peaceful harmony. No, it's not. It's violent and nasty and heartless, and most things suffer horribly on their way to dying. Maybe it gets ripped apart by coyotes, but more often than not, and I know because I've seen it, because I lived in the woods, a deer will get old and sick, and it'll starve to death because it can't stand up, or it'll freeze to death because the winters get too cold and it can't get around to get food. Or it'll get some horrible sickness and it'll be lying around and it'll have maggots in it while it's still alive, and vultures standing around waiting to eat the frickin' thing, because nature doesn't give a crap. The only thing that gives a crap is people, which is good. I like that. And most of the hunters I know a number of hunters, they don't want the animal to suffer. So if you're saying that if you eat meat, you're causing suffering, you don't understand what's going on. A hunter reduces suffering. Now, another straw man, don't throw at me, is, well, so you think it's okay to kill your neighbor as long as you don't make him suffer? Nope, said nothing of the sort, believe nothing of the sort. But if you're going to talk about suffering, talk about suffering. Don't get it wrong. Don't lie about what you believe. If you're going to talk about, well, it shouldn't be killed, then talk about that. Be honest about what you're saying. Hunting does not increase suffering. There is pretty much no way that most things will die, most large vertebrates will die in nature that is less suffering than getting killed by a human hunter. There just isn't. And if you don't believe me, go live in nature for a while and see how friggin' ruthless it is, and see how slowly and painfully so many things die. It's freaking horrible. And that's how nature is. I don't like it. I don't want to contribute to that amount of suffering. But to pretend that eating meat causes suffering is just stupid and dishonest. No, it freaking doesn't. You can say, again, buying meat from that industry that treats their animals like that contributes to suffering. True. Good. I don't like that. Feel free to try to talk people out of that. That's excellent. Go right ahead. Once upon a time, we used to go to a farm that had their free, well, not free range, but they're out in the field and they're wandering around. You can go and see how they treat their animals, and they do dairy products and meat, and they associate with the butcher and stuff. And so you can see how they're treated. And we used to get our meat there. And those cows had an easier life than any other like wild animal. They get shelter, they get free medical care and stuff because you don't want your cows to be sick. So it's not about suffering. They suffer less. Or the example of the cats I own that are horribly caged against their will because we keep them indoors and we don't let them out because we're enslaving them. Although they just sit around and enslave us and get free room and board and medical care. And I just spent $500 on one that had a urinary tract problem. They have an easier life than anything in the wild. Now, another straw man. Don't say that I'm claiming that, well, so if you can enslave a person as long as you make them not suffer. Nope, didn't say that. And you can kill a person as long as they suffer. Nope, didn't say that. Don't argue against things I didn't say. And the reason I keep bringing up these straw men is every single one is something I've seen a dozen different vegans throw at me because they don't want to address what I actually said because it's so obviously undeniable. No, eating a steak doesn't cause anything to suffer. It's dead. How the animal is treated ahead of time and whether you funded that can contribute to suffering. Talk about that. Be actually honest. So the notion that all species are equal is a total lie, and the notion that anybody believes that is a total lie. Here's the thing. The reason vegans do that, some vegans, is because there's a gray area and they don't want there to be a gray area. They want it to be a solid principle that they can say, this is what you must believe and how you must behave to be moral, when that doesn't even apply to them. Like if they say, I respect all species equally. Bullshit. No, you freaking don't. And no, you don't value all life the same and every living organism. You draw lines too. You may draw them in different places. The thing is, it is a gray area. And even if you're a principled anarchist or voluntarist, there are lots of gray areas you can think up of, all right, how much of a threat does something have to count as a threat before forcible defense is justified? Or in property, how much can you homestead? How much can you just say is yours and have the right to forcibly keep other people off? Like, is it a foot? Is it 1,000 miles? It must be. There are lots of places where there's actually gray area. And because there isn't a simple conceptual way to say, well, right here is the line. You can debate about where it should be and how to generally define the line, but it's a gray area, and I can prove that you know it's a gray area. You can be the most militant vegan around, and you know damn well there's a gray area, because if you're faced with either running over a dog or an ant, you're going to run the ant over, and you should. Or, more extreme, if you actually valued every living thing, every animal equally, and thought everyone owns itself just as much as I do, then you would feel justified killing me to stop me from swatting a mosquito. Either you would and you're batshit loony, or you wouldn't because you draw lines too about how much you care about things. And the more intelligent and the more aware they are, the more they seem important to you and the more you don't want them to suffer. And that's true of me. And it's true of almost everybody. The two extremes, which are both stupid, one is it's okay to murder a human, it's okay to kill a human being to stop him from swatting a mosquito, which you would have to believe, or to stop him from washing his hands for that matter. You're killing bacteria. That's one extreme, which is obviously stupid and bogus. The other extreme is when people say anything that isn't human beings, and there are a number of anarchists who argue this, anything that isn't human beings, they're just property, nothing else. It doesn't matter what you do to them. So if your neighbor wants to torture kittens to death as his hobby, that's perfectly fine. No, it freaking isn't. And there is some point at which I would forcibly intervene. Like if somebody's out, hunting down gorillas, I would actually feel justified in trying to stop them. Because gorillas, while I don't put them on the same level as people, they're pretty damn high up with their intelligence and awareness, and it would creep me out if somebody, let's go have fun shooting gorillas. No, screw you. I'm going to try to get in your way and I'm going to stop you. Because I don't just think, well, it's just the same as furniture or any other property. I don't want to see that suffering. They're aware enough that I want to reduce their suffering. And there's a gray area between that and swatting a mosquito. And there are 80 bazillion species in between. And we can debate about where to draw the lines and how to treat different animals. And we should, and that's perfectly useful. Admit that there is a gray area. Stop pretending that you have some principled thing that meat eaters don't, because you freaking don't. You just draw the lines in different places. And sometimes you don't draw the lines in different, like, oh, well, of course I'm going to kill ants that are in my house, or of course I'm going to swat a mosquito. And then some people say, no, I won't, I'll sort of brush him away. Wherever you draw the lines, admit that you're drawing lines. Don't pretend, well, this is a principled thing, you have to respect every form of life, which again, if you want to be principled, why are you stopping at plants or protozoa or bacteria or wherever you're drawing the line? Plants are living things too. You're taking their life. And I could also get into the fact that what you eat, even if it's plant, whoever grew that slaughtered countless living organisms to keep them from eating it. Or even just, well, we're going to till up the ground to grow some stuff. You know how many things you just killed tilling up the ground? Or just walking out in the field to harvest something? You can't exist without killing things. And people say, well, I know that's necessary, but I don't want to cause unnecessary suffering. Good, start with that. That's actually, it's a little vague, because unnecessary for what? But at least start with something honest, that I want to reduce suffering, especially of animals that are more aware and more intelligent. Good, me too. And guess what? That's true of most meat eaters, and it's true of most hunters. And it's why when a lot of people who eat meat see the videos of the horrible conditions that factory farming is, a lot of people go, ew, I don't like that. Good. That's a good sign. It's a good sign they don't like seeing other species suffer, just like they don't like seeing other people suffer. That's outstanding. But admit that it's a gray area, and admit that you're drawing the lines, and don't just pretend, this is a principled thing, I just apply voluntarism to all species. No, you freaking don't. I just think all animal species have equal rights. No, you freaking don't. I think they all have the same value. No, you don't. I think they all own themselves just as much as I do. No, you freaking don't. All of those are an outright lie. Stop lying if you want to convince other people. Say what you actually mean. Admit there are gray areas. Admit that we're drawing lines in different places, and try to talk people into changing where they draw the line and how much suffering they're willing to contribute to, or death, or whatever else. Then you'll actually have a better chance of persuading people to change their behavior if you're honest about what you believe.